Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our trade deadline shows here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, because he's been on here for a few times, that Jacob Billington got a pretty big trade that just went down not that long ago, and that was Jake Guentzel moving to the Carolina Hurricanes, which we talked about on the show the other day or yesterday, and that the Carolina Hurricanes would be the biggest fit for him, and big return. Lots of moving parts here. Penguins get the trade Guentzel and Ty Smith to the Carolina Hurricanes for Michael Bunting, Billy Koivunen, Vasily Ponomarev, Cruz Lucius, first round pick 2024 conditional, and Carolina's fifth round pick in 2024 also conditional. It's a little bit murky on with the picks there, but that is what's been reported right now. Jacob, initial thoughts on this trade? You wrote the news piece that's going to be coming out tomorrow morning, but what do you think about this trade? It is a pretty big deal with how many pieces that were involved in this.
Yeah, I think both teams hit a home run on this. And I know that that's a little bit controversial from the Penguins' perspective because a lot of people are saying that they didn't get quite enough. They got a lot of quantity, but not much quality. But I think that they did get a lot of quality. I mean, we could talk about Jake Guentzel. Everybody knows who he is. I do want to talk about what the Penguins got in return a little bit. So they got Michael Bunting. Everybody knows Michael Bunting and what he does. But for the prospects that they got, all three of those prospects are NHL caliber prospects. So I do think that all three of them do make the Penguins in the next 2 to 3 years, if not sooner. Ponomarev has spent some time in the AHL. He's done really well there. Cruz Lucius, he's done really well in the NCAA. And Ville Koivunen's doing fantastic in the Liga as well. So they're all putting up some really good seasons. But Carolina has to be happy that they didn't move any of their three top prospects in Alexander Nikishin, who was untouchable. That was a non-starter. But then you have Scott Morrow and you have Jackson Blake. Those are three players. And Bradley Nadeau you can throw in there as well.
Yeah.
Those are four prospects that you're incredible to get by without trading them. But Pittsburgh did get three very good prospects in return, as well as a first or second round pick and potentially a fifth round pick if Carolina wins the cup. So they did really well. Carolina, they got Jake Guentzel. There's not much to talk about there. He's a 35 goal guy. He's a good point per game. He's probably the second best forward on Carolina already.
Mm-hmm.
And one really interesting thing about it, I don't know if you've seen, but it's a money in, money out trade. So right now, Carolina still has 5.8 million in cap space that they can play with, which are they going to do something with it? Are they going to add another depth forward? I'm not sure. They're certainly set on defense and in net. They're not looking to add there, but they can look to add another depth forward. That'd be fantastic. But Jake Guentzel is the biggest fish in the market, and they got him. And it's not something that Carolina usually does. So it's nice to see this. And I wonder if an extension is going to be worked out pretty soon.
It is, and that's the thing. You give up so much, and you'd hope that he would resign with you. And also I didn't involve. There's the 25% retention as well included. So the Carolina's not taking on the full salary. And Ty Smith was a prospect. He's kind of borderline, not really a prospect anymore. And he's kind of bounced around now. He was traded from New Jersey to Pittsburgh, and now he's in Carolina. So it's we'll see what that is. He could be just a throw in. We'll see what happens with him. But yeah, Guentzel's the big guy here. For the Hurricanes, what does he bring to this? I mean, I know we know what Guentzel brings, but for what the Hurricanes are, they've got a pretty high-powered offense. Guentzel probably will fit with what Brind'Amour likes because he is a good defense. He's good defensively as well. Good two-way forward. Does this make the Hurricanes one of the favorites to come out of the East? I know, the Florida Panthers also had a Tarasenko. They're the big power there. But what does it push the needle forward more that Hurricanes are more of a cup contender now with Guentzel on the team?
Oh, 100%. And if you look at the playoff stats, Guentzel's a point per game in 58 playoff games, and he has a top 3 goals per game in the playoffs among all active players. So he is a playoff performer. As we've seen the last couple of years with the Carolina Hurricanes in the playoffs, they do need that extra scoring touch. They kind of looked around for it last year. They didn't really land it like they hoped. And this year they absolutely got it. And he's been on LTIR since Valentine's Day, but he's ready to come back on March 10th. And I think he's going to fit in really well on that top line with Sebastian Aho. And whether you want to put Teuvo Teravainen or Andrei Svechnikov on the other wing, it doesn't matter. If you're putting a guy like Jake Guentzel with Sebastian Aho, not a significant downgrade from where Sidney Crosby's at right now. So I expect a very similar production for Guentzel on the transition to Carolina. But in the playoffs, he moves the needle a ton. I mean, Michael Bunting, you'd like to keep him if you can. He's a great playoff asset. But if you're using him to upgrade to Jake Guentzel, no doubt that you want to do that.
Yeah. Well, Bunting, I mean, he returns to his old GM. It seems like Dubas loves him. He traded for him to get him from Arizona, and now he's got him again. Seems to like the guy. Bunting also has term on his contract, so he is the guy that's not. He's going to be in Pittsburgh for a bit. As a free agent signing in Carolina before. So yeah, I think Bunting probably would do well with Crosby on that top line because he did pretty well with Austin Matthews in Toronto. He was okay in Carolina. I don't know if he really was very impressive. I didn't really notice him a lot. But Bunting's a really good player. I think he's going to fit in Pittsburgh. What do you think about him being in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, he struggled at even strength in Carolina. He hasn't put up a ton of points, but he kind of switched his game a little bit because in Toronto, he wasn't much of a power play producer. And in Carolina, he's been exactly that. He's gotten way more power play points than even strength points. And I don't know if you've looked at the power play percentages lately, but Pittsburgh is like at rock bottom. I don't know where they place, but it's bottom five.
Pretty bad.
And so Michael Bunting can go over there and really help out there, which is weird to say that Michael Bunting is going to help out Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Erik Karlsson, but he's doing it this season and they're not. So I think he's going to go over there and I think he's going to be a huge impact right in front of the net. That's something that they're kind of missing is that net front presence.
Yeah. We'll see how Bunting does. We'll see how Guentzel does when he does get back from injury. He is not back yet. So really good big trade. That's another big fish out of the talks about trade deadline on the day. I don't know what else can happen I mean, there's a few names still out there being thrown around, but the big names are gone. The big names on our trade bait board are pretty much, I mean, I don't know if guys like Buchnevich are going to be traded tomorrow. We'll talk about that a little later, but let's talk about some of the other trades that went down today. I mean, nothing as big as the Guentzel one, but another guy off the trade bait board that went was Anthony Duclair. And goes to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And the Lightning always do this. They always add someone at the deadline that could potentially do something in the playoffs and be a guy like, oh, he was a big difference. He went to the Lightning along with a 7th-round pick. And like Eugene says, always seems to get 7th-round picks or later round picks. Well, he got another one in this deal, 2025 one. Not this draft, but next one. And San Jose gets a 3rd-round pick this year's draft and Jack Thompson, pretty good prospect. And one of Lightning's probably one of their top prospects. They don't have a lot of high-end guys, but he's probably one of them. What do you think about that trade?
Well, I'm going to start with Jack Thompson. I think he's a top 2 prospect from Tampa right now. I think him and Isaac Howard were kind of neck and neck for that top spot. So getting rid of him is traditional Tampa business. Prospects just don't exist in Tampa Bay for whatever reason. And a 3rd-round pick going to San Jose for Anthony Duclair. Duclair is one of those guys. He's bounced around for a long time. This is his 8th team in the last 12 years. And I don't know. I don't understand why he moves around so much because he seems to do pretty well everywhere he goes. He did good in Ottawa. He didn't get qualified and he signed in Florida. He did well there. He got traded, more of a cap casualty in Florida, but he got traded to the San Jose Sharks. Now he's getting traded to Tampa. He's bounced around a lot, but he always does pretty well. And obviously, like you said, they get the 7th-round pick. They do well late in the draft. But Duclair is going to add some really good depth scoring. I mean, like you look at Tampa Bay's forward group, and they have like Connor Sheary up and down the lineup. You don't want that. Duclair is an upgrade on Connor Sheary for sure. And yeah, he's going to add bounce to that lineup, and they've been struggling a little bit. Vasilevsky hasn't looked fantastic. Kucherov is carrying that team on his back. He's leading the team by over 40 points in scoring. So hopefully Duclair can come in and mesh well with some guys and hopefully find a right fit. He's one of those guys that you can put him on your third line or your first line. It's more so chemistry rather than just based off his skill.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing. Duclair, I think can actually add a lot to the Lightning. He does play a very skilled game. He can go up and down the lineup. So I think he is probably the prototypical Lightning acquisition around the deadline. And we'll see if he does stick around the team after, because I believe he is an unrestricted free agent after this season, right? So they may re-sign him. Seems like they hold on to these guys that they get at the deadline. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. Other trades that went down today, and one I think could be very underrated one for the Avalanche, is Brandon Duhaime going from the Minnesota Wild for a 2026 third-round pick. This is 2 drafts in the future now. What do you think about that? I mean, Duhaime's had a pretty good run with the Minnesota Wild, very good bottom 6 forward. I know Mariah's raved about him in her any of her takeaway pieces. She loves Duhaime. I probably not very happy that he was traded. I'd have to get her reaction later on, but what do you think about that one? I mean, it is a smaller trade, but I think it could be something that we could be talking about after the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely. He's a high energy guy that you're going to throw in on your fourth line. He kills penalties. He doesn't get a ton of points. He has 8 points in, I believe, 61 games this season, but he's not there to get the points. He's there to be defensively responsible, add some physicality, add some grit to the bottom of the forward group in Colorado, which they don't really have a ton of. Like Nathan MacKinnon can be physical. He can play that game, but you don't want him being the one to rough everybody up and whatnot. Same as like Rantanen, and if Landeskog comes back, you do have it in your lineup, but not towards the bottom. So Duhaime absolutely adds that. And again, he just increases the penalty kill. And for a third round pick, he's absolutely somebody that you want to look at. He's only making 1.1 million. He's absolutely somebody that I could see the Avalanche trying to re-sign for about the same cap hit, maybe a little bit of a raise, but he's somebody I could definitely see sticking around.
Yeah, I think so too. And the Avalanche have been super busy in the last couple days. They also got Yakov Trenin and Graham Sword from the Nashville Predators for Jeremy Hansel and a 2025 third round pick. Trenin's been a pretty good guy for the Predators over the last couple seasons. Anything with that trade you want to kind of mention?
Yeah, no, with Trenin, it's pretty much the same as Duhaime. He's just a really good fourth liner. He's going to add more defensive responsibility there. They do have some good players down in their bottom 6, so I wonder if a couple of these guys might rotate in and out as the 13th forward, not because they are a 13th forward in the league, but because they are a 13th forward on the Avalanche, just because they're so deep. And especially now that you have Jonathan Drouin, who has 30 points in his last 36 games. He's elevated in the lineup. You're bumping other guys down that you were kind of expecting Drouin to slide into. So there's not much room on the Avalanche roster, but they're making the most of every single slot. So they've pretty much upgraded everywhere other than their superstars that they already have that they don't need to upgrade. They've done a fantastic job this trade deadline.
Yeah. Maybe goaltending could be something. Their backup is it's Justus Annunen right now. So I mean, he's played well in the starts that he's had, but if something happens to Georgiev, and I don't know if they'll be okay with having Annunen in for the playoffs. And it's happened in the past where they had to use their backup, and we'll see what happens there, but they could make another move tomorrow and try to get a goaltender. Not many goaltenders. Actually, I don't think any goaltenders have moved at the deadline here yet. So, and there's some teams that need that. So we'll see. Other trades today. The first one that went down this morning was Joel Edmundson going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. It seems like the Maple Leafs are upgrading their defense. Arguably, are they upgrading? I don't know. Lyubushkin, Edmundson. What do you think about Edmundson going to the Maple Leafs?
It's fine. I mean, like, he's an upgrade on, well, it depends on the style that they're going to play. Because on paper, I would take Edmundson over like Simone Benoit and William Lagesson, but it depends on the style. Because Simone Benoit does play that physical game. I would say physically, I would prefer Benoit over Edmundson, but just as the general defensive game, I would like to see Edmundson in the lineup. But the issue that I have with the Leafs and what they're doing with their defensive group is that they're spending a lot of draft picks on a lot of mediocre guys rather than going all in on a big name. Like they're not getting any needle movers there. They're all just good depth defensemen, which you absolutely need. And there's nothing wrong with them adding him, but they need somebody else at the top of the lineup, I think. Because TJ Brody's not having a fantastic season. Jake McCabe's doing all right. Timothy Liljegren, they're not giving him the chance. I think he's been fantastic, but they're just not giving him the looks. So I'm not really sure what they're doing with their defense. Edmundson adds some really good depth to it, but I don't think depth is the issue with the Maple Leafs defense group right now.
No, it's not. And the thing is, like, there were rumors that they were maybe in on Hanifin, Tanev. So, I mean, those are guys that would probably make a bigger difference at the top of the lineup. Obviously, Hanifin would have. Tanev definitely better than a guy like, these guys that they've gotten. So, I mean, it is something that maybe they were in on these guys, just didn't want to pay the price for them. And, 2024 third round or 2025 fifth. It's draft picks. They're not high-end draft picks. So maybe they're just thinking, we'll see. We'll see what happens, right? So
and the biggest thing with that trade, two things. Edmonton's a left-handed shot defenseman. They have too many of those already. Like in the Matthews, Marner, Nylander era, Cody Ceci is probably the best right shot defenseman, maybe Justin Hall. Like they keep going after these left-handed guys, and I don't get it. And another thing, they paid pretty much the same price that Florida paid for Vladimir Tarasenko, and they're only getting Joel Edmundson. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't like the deal. I think they paid too much for something that they didn't need.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't really on board with them with Edmundson. I knew probably the Capitals were going to trade him. I didn't know where, and he's been pretty good. I mean, it's like he's a good depth defenseman. I think his best days are behind him. He used to be a really good guy with Montreal and St. Louis, but he's getting older. He's more of a depth guy now, so we'll see what happens with him in Toronto. Other two trades, three actually, and we'll just quickly go through is Anthony Beauvillier going to the Nashville Predators. Third time he's been traded in the last season and a bit. First he was involved in the Bo Horvat trade, then he was traded from the Canucks to the Blackhawks, and now he's Blackhawks to the Predators. This time 2024 fifth round pick going the other way. Predators obviously, they're in the mix of the playoffs, and that's the thing. And they did trade Yakov Trenin, probably not a big thing. Getting Beauvillier could potentially be an underrated move. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I mean, you probably remember very well how good he was when he first went to Vancouver.
Yeah,
he was great, and then he kind of just fell off out of nowhere, and it was pretty disappointing to see. And then he got traded to Chicago for a fifth round pick, and then now gets traded to Nashville for another fifth round pick. So I don't know where the fall off came from. Obviously, he was overplaying his expectations when he first got to Vancouver, but I don't think anybody could have predicted what happened with him. But he does add some really good depth to Nashville. I don't think they should be in a position to be buying. Not that a fifth round pick is really spending too much, but not much of a needle mover there either.
no,
but you never know. Fresh space.
Yeah, and he's going to be probably maybe on a playoff team. Who knows? Nashville's played some really good hockey lately and pushed them back into that conversation. So he could end up being someone in the playoffs that could make a difference. Other one, Troy Stecher going to the Edmonton Oilers along with the 2024 seventh round pick from the Coyotes, 2027 fourth round pick. We're getting into the 2027 draft now. Come on. This is it. Yeah. So, I mean, he's gotten traded now he went to the Flames last trade deadline. Now he goes to the Oilers, just running through the Canadian teams, I guess. I love Troy Stecher. I think he's a great depth defenseman. I don't know he's the answer to what the Oilers are needing. Does he move anything, or is it just a guy that just for injuries, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think he's just a guy. Just a guy to put on the roster if you need. He's not somebody that makes the top six in Edmonton. They have a pretty decent defense group. That's I would say it's a little bit underrated. They could use an upgrade on it, but I do think that people underrate it. They do have some good players on the right side, like especially Ekholm. He's not going to be challenging for, especially for a top four spot. They might rotate him in and out just to see who meshes well with who, give him a couple looks and whatnot. But I do expect that he's going to be the seventh defenseman.
Yeah.
And just playoff depth. People get injured in the playoffs. Edmonton's looking at going for a long run there. So you're always going to need at least 7 defensemen in the playoffs.
Yeah. And like I say, Stecher's a great fill-in, I think, for guys, and that's what he was in Vancouver as well. He filled in on the top 4 at times. He's a pretty good two-way defenseman. So I mean, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, last trade was just 2 prospects moving. Jacob Perreault and Jan Mysak. Again, that's just 2 rebuilding teams moving 2 prospects around.
Yeah.
Not sure why. I mean, Mysak was one of their better prospects. Perreault, one of Anaheim's better prospects. Not much to say there. We'll see if they change. I mean, they were both playing pretty well as well. It's not like they were struggling prospects.
Yeah. If I had to pick a winner, I would say Montreal. I do like Perreault a bit more than Mysak, but like I don't even understand it. I don't know why they did it. Yeah.
Maybe they think the one's going to be better in the system than the other. And
right.
Yeah, we won't find out that till way down the road. All right. Well, that was the day before the trade deadline. Also, this morning, we found out the full details of the Noah Hanifin trade. Quickly just go through that. Calgary got a conditional 2025 first-round pick, Daniil Miramanov, a conditional third, and they also retained 50% of Hanifin's salary in that one. Also involved Philadelphia Flyers, 2024 fifth-round pick. They got that for retaining 25% of Hanifin's salary there. So the Vegas Golden Knights are only going to be paying 25% of Hanifin's salary.
That's insane.
It's all this salary retention all over the deadline right now. Hanifin made his debut as we're recording the game just finished. He was noticeable. He had a couple blocked shots. He played on the top pairing with Pietrangelo, so pretty expected. What do you think about now that we know the full details of that trade? Did Calgary get enough for what everyone was kind of thinking that Hanifin was going to go for a bit more than what he did?
Yeah, I think they did fine. It's not a home run or anything. It's not going to completely change the course of the whole franchise or anything, but I think they did fine. Vegas did really good to get him for that price. But yeah, it's whatever. That's kind of what I expected him to go for. Nothing that's gonna make your jaw drop or anything, but pretty solid deal.
Yeah. Lots of picks in there. Miramanov is a depth defenseman. He's played a handful of games in Vegas over the last couple seasons. So he may be something, but I think it's the first round pick that's going to be the thing. Is it what are the conditions on it? Do you know? I didn't really see.
I have it open right here actually. So if the pick is traded by March 10th, 2024. Sorry, if Hanifin is traded by March 10th, 2024, or the pick is top 10, Calgary will receive 2026 first. So it's a first round pick. It's just a matter of when. Regardless. So they're just making sure that they don't flip Hanifin.
Sounds good. Yeah, so they did get it's a first round pick. It's not going to be downgraded to a second if something happens. So they got a first round pick for him. I think that's what a lot of fans were hoping they were going to get. I don't know what else they were thinking that they were going to get for him. I mean, he could potentially be a rental. It's not like they're going to get a ton. So we'll see. All right, before we leave, what do you see tomorrow? Is there any more big trades on the horizon, or are we kind of seeing the same thing as last season where it was little things and not much else? So right now on our trade bait board, the top name is Jacob Markstrom. Probably not getting moved.
He's not moving.
Sounds like that's not happening. Pavel Buchnevich is the next one on the list. Jake Allen, Carrier, Chychrun. Do you see any of those moving tomorrow?
One team that I'm going to keep my eye on is the Winnipeg Jets. There's three names that I think that they should target, and that is Tyler Toffoli, Pavel Buchnevich, and Alexander Carrier. Those are three players that I think would be huge for Winnipeg, especially Buchnevich and Carrier. I think Carrier is a really underrated defenseman. He's great defensively, but he can move the puck a little bit, and that's kind of something that Winnipeg already has with Dylan DeMello.
Mm.
But I would like to see another Dylan DeMello in the lineup, and that's kind of exactly what Carrier is. But they could
Yeah,
also use a scoring winger in Toffoli or Buchnevich. So those are kind of the two I'm keeping my eye on.
yeah, yeah. I forgot. Tyler Toffoli is probably the next best guy that is on the market for rental, I guess. And he's been in the mix or a few teams. The Canucks are now apparently shifting their focus to him after losing out on Guentzel. For me, I would love if Toffoli returned to the Canucks because he was really good for them in 2020 when he was acquired, and he played really well with Pettersson, and Pettersson needs a scoring winger. So if the Canucks can manage to get Toffoli without having to give up a ton, which sounds like New Jersey wants a bit for him, they may lose out on him too, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with these guys. If we're going to see some big names moving, or we're just going to be talking about some small deals on our trade recap, or we're going to be talking about all these ones again. I don't know,
Right.
but we'll see. Thanks, Jacob, for coming on and talking about all these trades again that happened. The biggest one being the Guentzel trade, but we'll see what happens next. Make sure checking out all of our articles, thehockeywriters.com, all of our trade deadline coverage. We'll be pumping out any articles that we can get news-wise tomorrow. Everyone's going to be hard at work with that. Hopefully we are busy. And any of our videos, we'll be pumping some of those out. If there's any big names, that is. I'm not going to be popping on here for a small fourth line guy. But we'll have a recap show. Whatever happens, we'll talk about it. Until next time, we'll see you on another trade deadline show on the Hockey Writers YouTube channel.